Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Jason Buffington, but you'll notice that I am not here with my usual co-host, Dave Russell, on our Monday session.
Not
Instead,
quite, no.
Melissa, it's only been about a month since you co-hosted with me before, but thank you for joining us again today.
Thanks for having me back again, Jason. We always have a good time talking about things like disasters.
And there are a lot of disasters to talk about. We're gonna let's now. So you're from New Jersey. I'm from the great state of Texas. We want folks at home to please pile on and tell us where you're from as well. Our social media is also being driven out of the great state of Texas this week. Production is running out of Georgia. Looks like Ohio is already in the house. That's a nice touch. Awesome. Let's go look at the old world. Okay, so hey, look, Czech Republic, Prague. Who could that be?
I have no idea.
Joining us today, and we'll get back to the map in a few seconds while folks are weighing in. Let's make the world green. But joining us today from that little bitty green dot right in the middle of Europe is our dear friend Alec King. Alec, welcome to the Veeam LinkedIn live stream.
Thank you very much, and I am way too excited to be here. Actually, yeah.
It's a little later for you than it is for the rest of us, so hopefully you're fully caffeinated. For the folks at home, this week we have Melissa Palmer, who often is the chief voice of everything orchestration and disaster recovery at Veeam. Alec is the product management lead who actually owns our orchestration product. Thank you both for being part of the call today. Let's get right into the data, and I want to get your feedback on a couple points to go into it. In the largest industry research project that's been published to date, the Data Protection Trends Report, one of the questions that was asked, and this was asked of 2,800 enterprises from around the world, 28 different countries by coincidence, they were asked, what does modern data protection look like? And what you can see in the dark green is they could choose all the answers that apply, and then in the yellowish green, what was most important as a facet of modern data protection. And I think it's interesting. Look at the top two. The top one is the ability to automate recovery workflows, right? And so not just be able to click that button, but really have that whole thing work for you after that. And then I think it's interesting also that adjacent to that was disaster recovery, but we probably shouldn't even stop there, because if you look further down, the next one that list is around embedding and automating. So again, that more of an integrated ability type story. And then Melissa, check out that fourth one down, integrating data protection as part of comprehensive cybersecurity. You have a little phrase that you key in on that, don't you?
Yeah, it's almost like ransomware is a disaster or something like that, right?
Ransomware is a disaster. So, okay, so that's what people are looking towards, right? Maybe one of the reasons they're looking towards that is because we're going to look at our second data point, and then let's open it up for conversation, is when we asked organizations, what does failover look like today? Bad stuff happens, right? Fire, flood, malware, bad stuff happens. When organizations, this actually comes out of our cloud protection report, when organizations were asked what kinds of failover mechanisms they have for resuming functionality, about half of organizations have scripts, right? The beauty of a batch file. I've been doing this for 31 years. Batch files never get old, right? 34%, 1 in 3 organizations, they're going to manually reconfigure stuff, because that's what you want to do when the CXO is standing behind your shoulder going, when's the stuff going to be running again? And then bless the hearts of those 16% of folks in the bottom that are actually have orchestrated workflows. 1 in 6 have recovery workflows. The other 5 and 6, they're either doing it manual or they're doing it on the fly. What's your reaction to that? Melissa, go first, and then Alec, let's talk about the problem and what our approach is.
I think it's horrifying. As someone who used to do disaster recovery with a bunch of hack job scripts, and it was an absolutely horrible experience, especially when they'd be like, so we need to talk to the auditors. We're doing an internal audit right now, and you need to walk through everything that happens during a disaster. And we're like, well, that script runs here and that one runs here, and we hope that everything comes back online. That's usually not a good answer. And then the old, we're going to manually do everything is also extremely horrifying, because Yeah, people make mistakes, especially when they're nervous, especially when they're under pressure. And if you're in the situation where, let's say your vSphere admin can't actually get there or can't remote in because, hey, they've got something else going on because there's a disaster or everything's down, right? So you're going to get some random person to start running those disaster recovery plans and trying to follow a script that's probably not up to date. That's just another recipe for absolute disaster.
Now, Alec, when you first joined Veeam, this was the mechanism, right? I mean, this was the best that was in market today. You've been the primary person championing a better way for almost your entire Veeam tenure. Talk about, what's the landscape look like then? How real is this? And then what is Veeam's vision for a better way?
Well, yes, it has been a long road working on this product, and it's really real. These situations are real. I know customers, I've spoken to customers who have documentation, as they call it, for a disaster, which is literally screenshots of various products and what you might hope to see there and what you should do if you see this screen. And as Melissa said, as you said, it's the wrong time. It's a very stressful time. There's a lot of pressure, and it's definitely the wrong time to start doing a 57-point manual process to get you back and recovered. What you really want is a plan that has been made beforehand, tested beforehand, known to work, and let's just put it like you can just click the big green button.
Got it. All right. So if there is a proverbial big green button, Melissa, walk us through that. And actually, it sounds like I'm getting some feedback on my side. I'm going to resync and I will jump right back in. Melissa,
while we're waiting for Jason to come back, because we don't want to miss him too much, let's go head on over to the map and see who has checked in. We have New Mexico, California, and Nevada. What up, Rickatron and everybody else at Amazon reInvent right now? Thanks for tuning in. We've also got Brazil in South America. And then we can head back to Europe, where we've got France, Switzerland, Italy, Romania, Slovakia, Albania, and Russia. And then we've got Egypt, Libya, India, and Thailand. So we've got a ton of people tuned in today, which is awesome. And let's go back to our slides. Now, when we talk about Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, which is the Veeam product that does all these wonderful things we just talked about, we actually just released version 5 last week. And we're starting to talk about things like stress-free recovery, right? We don't want the CXOs breathing down your neck and you being stressed about how everything's going to go down. So we're going to do that a couple of different ways, right? Automated risk reduction. We're automating everything and we're testing it left and right to make sure that you're reducing risk, right? You're going to find the things that are wrong in your environment before something I've been now calling disaster day strikes, right? We want to find all that bad stuff out ahead of time. The other good part is you're going to use one simple tool to protect all of your VMware VMs, from those most mission critical ones, protected by Veeam CDP, regular Veeam replicas, backups, and also select storage integrations. You can protect all those different types of data the same way. Now, because we're automating all of the things, you're going to save valuable time. Alec, what are the 2 most terrible time-intensive things when it comes to disaster recovery?
Oh my goodness.
Just pick 2. I know there's a lot of them.
Testing and documentation.
Ding, ding, ding. Those are the worst. As soon as you finish your DR plan, it's basically out of date. So what Orchestrator is going to do once you create a DR plan is going to generate that DR plan for you and update it daily automatically for you. Same thing with testing. So you can run a DR test on demand whenever you'd like, or you could schedule your DR test to happen every 3rd Tuesday or what have you, and things will be testing all the time. You'll get a pretty report in your email box afterwards saying, hey, look, we're good to go, or oh no, something's messed up, go fix it. And of course, all of these things allow you to restore confidence in your ability to recover, right? You're going to know that when disaster hits, you go in and hit the button and you're going to be good to go. This is something we've been doing for a while now. We're now on version 5. And Alec, can you tell me about some of the fun stuff that joined Orchestrator in version 5, maybe?
Oh gosh. Well, the big deal was HP storage integration, added to our previous NetApp capabilities. We're orchestrating the entire failover of storage and vSphere data stores and recovering the VMs in a single plan. So again, a one-stop shop for the
The one-stop orchestration shop.
Yeah.
There's also a couple of other just usability stuff, right? We just want to make Orchestrator easier to use every release. There's one cool new feature that's probably my favorite. There's a new view of an inventory, everything in your environment. And it tells you not only what VMs you have and what plans and what's protected, but if you click on a VM group, like a vSphere tag or a data store, a backup and replication job, it'll tell you, hey, this isn't being protected by Orchestrator and you might be in trouble if something happens. So you should probably get on that and create an easy disaster recovery plan. Jason, do we have you back now?
You do have me back. I guess I have failed over, and you're now working off a replica of Jason.
That's cool. That's cool. We like replicas
awesome.
here.
With near zero data loss, because Orchestrator now covers CDP, which is something that a year ago we could not claim. So, all right, and I appreciate you holding down while we had this little failover. And Melissa, I guess you are my replica, so thank you for holding down the host.
You're
so
welcome.
let's talk a little bit more about the architecture of this. So one of the things that, when you talk about backup, it's really easy to say, okay, I'm going to make copies of my stuff, and then I'm just going to restore it back where it came from. But that's not typically the case when we talk about disaster recovery. And that's true whether we're talking about a primary data center that's underwater, that caught on fire, that has now been wholly encrypted by ransomware, whatever the scenario is. That's not normally where you fail over to. That requires a different kind of architecture. Can you kind of walk folks through what an orchestrator layout looks like? Because this is an opportunity for something that people ought to be thinking about for 22.
Yeah, and I'm going to make it really super simple. Whatever you've already done in backup and replication today, you get to keep. Right. So I've seen a lot of disaster recovery stuff out there where they're like, oh, well, now you need to protect your VMs for DR because you've protected them this way. No. It's basically we're going to integrate into your backup and replication environment. We're going to add on to it, right? Add on all this orchestration magic. And we have a little agent for Orchestrator that we install on your BNR servers. And Orchestrator then understands everything you have today, your CDP job, your regular replica jobs. Backup jobs, storage integration, right? Everything is there. And then on top of that, then you can create your DR plan, right? So you go through a quick little HTML5 wizard, you build your plan out, and then you can go ahead and start testing and documenting. I actually timed myself building an orchestration plan and getting it to testing, and I did it in 3 minutes. So I went from 3 minutes from nothing to creating a plan, running the first check on it to make sure that I was meeting things like my RPO and that my destination environment was ready to receive this workload. And then I tested all within 3 minutes. So that's how easy this is to use.
So I love it's easy to use. A lot of times what we often find is that when something is easy to use, it takes a little bit of work to get going again. Let's take a look at the architecture slide, because you mentioned a couple key ideas in how that failover works. You've mentioned snapshots. I joked about CDP. Certainly traditional backup.
CDP. Do I see CDP on this diagram? I hope it's there. We're not joking about CDP. It's there.
So you got the production environment on the left,
yep.
Right? You got our source production VMs all running in ESX. We got vSphere, we got vCenter, you got the storage in there as well. So how does Orchestrator actually lay that across? What should we be looking at as we move from the left-hand side to the right?
Well, really what you have to pay attention to is, and Orchestrator is going to help you with this, what is your RPO and what is your RTO? And that's something you're going to see all throughout Orchestrator. When you create a plan, when you run a test, right, we're going to be measuring these values. So the important thing is up front to say, okay, what are my RPOs and RTOs so I can protect my data the right way, right? We keep on talking about CDP, which is like a near zero type of RPO. I'm not going to use Veeam CDP for an 8-hour RPO. That would just be silly. So it's picking the right type of data protection up front so then you can use Orchestrator later to recover. And one thing I just want to point out on here that I noticed is instant VM recovery, right? Everybody knows Veeam's instant VM recovery is absolutely awesome. Yeah, you can do that with Orchestrator too. So if you really have those workloads that, yeah, it's a backup, but I want to get it online kind of fast, we can use instant VM recovery for that.
So Alec, V5, brand spanking new. So we talked a little about the new features. This has been kind of an evolutionary journey. Can you kind of walk us? So this is not what it looked like in the very beginning. There's a lot more boxes, a lot more capabilities along here. Talk about how that journey has progressed and what you've heard from adoption.
Sure, yes. And it has been quite an adventure. I mean, let's say with Veeam backup and replication, we have a fantastic scalable engine to perform data protection on multiple different environments. And you can know that your data is safe. It's packed away and it's safe. But when you want to recover it, it can be at scale. You need to operate at scale. So in a sense, Orchestrator doesn't do anything magic. We're orchestrating Veeam backup and replication. We're doing stuff that you could do yourself, clickety click click in the UI of Veeam backup and replication, but you don't want to do that 1,000 times,
right?
Or 10,000 times or more. So as Veeam backup added great features like storage integration, like CDP, we were tracking behind it thinking, how can this actually work in the real world? How can we scale this up? Not just in terms of performance of Veeam backup, which is great already, but the usability, the layers on top of that, the reporting and the visibility at a business level that you need, for example, to really make that engine hum when you're in a situation where you need to recover. So
Okay,
it's really grown alongside it.
I think I heard two things from you. So certainly talking about the repetitiveness, and we know that humans are not good at repetitive things, right? So anything that you have to do 1,000 times, 5,000 times, etc. By the way, I have a great question from Idris on: is DR Orchestrator included in the Veeam Availability Suite, or does it require additional licensing? We actually have. I think it's the last slide in our session for today. We're going to talk about licensing. So Idris, hang on for just a minute, and we're going to give you more than you ever wanted to know about licensing. But Alec, so we talked about scale and also the importance of repetitiveness. Is it also fair to say that when you orchestrate things, orchestration, that workflow is going to happen a lot faster than a human who's reading a screen, clicking a box over and over again? So there's a reduction of speed per recovery, and then there's the repetitiveness of recovering at scale. Is that the two axes for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Each individual recovery is made faster, and Orchestrator, when it's humming along, it can recover just as fast as your infrastructure can take it. So we do have some best practice stuff. Talk to our Veeam architects about getting instant VM recovery, which was already mentioned. If you're restoring from backups, it's great to have that enabled as many places as possible, because the VMs are back online in minutes and streaming from the backup, and then we migrate them to production storage. And again, we do this for 10, 100, thousands at a time, as many as you need, as many as your infrastructure can support.
Now, Melissa, one thing that you taught me when we first started, one of many things, but the importance of testing the same way that you're going to recover. And so using those scripts every time that you test, and then providing things, and you call them a readiness check. Can you want to walk us through how that's enabled for this?
So it's all about being able to prove that you can meet your RPO and RTO. So you're not stressed out when it's recovery time, right? We want to just reduce the stress, reduce the risk, all that good stuff. And there's two ways, right? There's a readiness check, which is a really super lightweight check of your environment. It's going to check your RPO, and then it's going to look at your destination environment and make sure it's ready to receive the workload in a couple of ways. If it's something silly like your host is in maintenance mode, it's going to say, hey, you got a host and maintenance mode over there. You might want to take a look at that. Another fun thing that it caught for me a couple weeks ago is I was rebuilding my storage environment and I never set up the export policies correctly. So when I ran the readiness check on a storage plan, it's like, yeah, we can't mount the storage over there, so you can't recover. It's going to catch a lot of stuff like that for you. Then we have a disaster recovery test we can run, right? And that's actually going to gauge your RPO and your RTO, right? So it's going to simulate a recovery. It's going to run your disaster recovery plan for you and then tell you, hey, you're good to go, or no, here's where you have issues. And when you do encounter an issue, Orchestrator is great at telling you exactly what it is, so it's easy to fix.
The thing that I thought was most interesting about what you talked about was not only finding those errors, but sometimes those errors are not circumstantial, like the host or the IP address. Sometimes it's because somebody made a change.
Oh, yes.
We've talked about this before too, around auditing, et cetera. And so reporting is actually a really big part of this. By the way, Idris came in with another question, so I think they're ready to orchestrate something. Does this require its own server? Because like in my test lab, I've just got this running as a VM within the rest of my kit. But what kind of horsepower do you really require in order to just get started with understanding the importance of Orchestrator V5?
That's for me, isn't it?
Whoever wants it.
Well, yeah, I usually have to sign off on the requirements. And there are so many scenarios, so that you can deploy in lots of different ways. But we do logically, conceptually advise that your disaster recovery solution is on the disaster recovery site.
Sure.
So like backup production, do backup copies over there, or replicate from production to the DR site. An Orchestrator should also be over there. Orchestrator includes, however, a fully functional backup server built in and a Veeam 1 server built in. It's kind of a smorgasbord of everything we've got here. And you can utilize those components too. If you size it correctly, if you deploy proxies, for example, if you need them. But overall, like, stepping back, if you want to POC Orchestrator, you can deploy it on a VM with 4 cores and 16 gig of RAM, and you can have a lot of fun with that.
You have a very different definition of fun than some of the folks at home. All right. Speaking of the folks at home, let's find out how the map is turning overall. Love it when Canada's in the house. Everything turns green. I didn't get to see that earlier. So let's see. So in the U.S., along with Canada, we got Washington State is on board. That's awesome. Looks like North Carolina, if I'm looking at that correctly. So welcome aboard there. Also, I see New Mexico's in the house. Y'all might have caught them earlier. Almost all of LATAM is ready for disaster recovery. Always awesome when Argentina and Brazil are both online. Almost that entire console. Please keep piling that on as well. Let's see, we got Germany looks new. Did y'all catch France and Italy earlier in the show?
We did, yes, sir.
Fantastic. And Russia? All the big ones. We're missing China and Australia, and those biggest ones would all be covered. So yeah, please keep piling on. By the way, and keep the questions coming. So Idris's question was around, does it need its own server? Can it be installed on the same server? Alec, I like your point on, yes, it does actually include its own instance of VBR. Yes, it includes its own instance of Veeam 1. In fact, we actually have a slide on that. Production folks, if you can bring up the question on, is your burger missing its fries? I built a version of this slide earlier. For a lot of organizations, if the only thing you're doing, and this is kind of your takeaway for today, or at least one of them, if the only thing you're doing is just backing up with VBR, we at Veeam, we appreciate you backing up with VBR. But it's kind of like taking a high-performance sports car out, but intentionally blacking out the dashboard. Right? It is more fun when you can see the instruments. It is more fun if you have released the governor brake. It is more fun if you have the complete package. And so, since this is almost lunchtime for some of us and dinner for others, I'm going to ask you, is your burger missing the fries and the drink? If you're just doing VBR, one of the things you ought to be thinking about is, do you have the right instrumentation? That's Veeam 1. Certainly also, are you using Orchestrator along the way? All right, time check. We got about 6 minutes left. Let's get back and answer Idris's first question is around licensing. Let's take a look at the packaging licensing. And Melissa, I'm going to defer this one to you.
Of course you will, Jason, right? So the great news is there's a lot of different ways to consume Orchestrator in a way that works for you. Yes, it is a separate license from VBR or Veeam Availability Suite, but you can add it on to your existing installation, of course. And if you consume it as part of the DR pack, right, that means you would be protecting all of the VMs in your environment, and you would get a really, really great discount. That pricing is super, super aggressive. If you're more along the lines of, well, I don't need it for everything, and guess what? You do need it for everything because ransomware is a disaster. You can also consume it in a standalone basis in packs of 10, right? So when it comes to licensing, if you look at that DR pack option, definitely talk to your Veeam sales rep out there because that pricing is just super aggressive and you'll be able to protect everything and then thus recover everything should things go south.
So Melissa, on this one, I actually have to correct some small part of what you said. So one little tweak on what Melissa said. So Melissa said that you ought to protect everything. You actually don't have to protect everything. You only have to protect the stuff that you want to be able to recover. So
okay, sure.
As long as you know.
As long as you don't care about it, you don't have to protect.
No. I mean, let's be fair, right? So as long as you know which servers are going to fail and or be encrypted, you only have to protect those. The others, don't worry about. Or maybe you should just protect all of them. So, all right. I'm sorry, that was just too easy not to do. Hey, all right. So there's a couple of key takeaways. We got about 4 minutes left in our talk for today. Is there anything about Orchestrator that we haven't covered already? We're super excited about this. The data shows more and more organizations are recognizing the need for orchestration. And in fact, we were joking in the pre-call. I do a lot of work with scouts when I'm not solving the world's data protection problems. When I talk to scouts about the first aid merit badge, I talk to them about your likelihood to survive is dependent on how much time between snake bite and hospital, right? Whatever you can do to shrink that.
So is that your RTO?
Yeah, it is. And the RPO is, how much you're going to lose, and there's a tourniquet kit for that. But shrinking that window from snake bite to hospital, that's an important deal. This is how you shrink the window from IT crises. It's just that simple. There are 3 key takeaways.
Actually,
Melissa,
this is the wrong slide, so it's really not. We're just going to go with download a 30-day free trial here, I think.
Fair enough.
Can you just hit that 3 product slide one more time real quick?
Yeah.
Because I just want to talk about something super cool that you can do with it. So we hammered Veeam CDP home. If you use a single Orchestrator server, you can actually do a dirty cheating method of CDP with one server. It's definitely not best practices, but it's really easy to take a look at. And you can kind of test out CDP and kind of test it out through all 3 products, right? You'll see the CDP alarms inside of Veeam 1. Veeam 1 can also run reports on what is not protected in your environment, right? So it can show you the VMs out of the box that aren't being backed up, so you know what you need to be protecting before you get ransomware. And you can also build out dashboards to monitor your disaster recovery site with Veeam 1, right? Because remember, when ransomware strikes or disaster day happens, disaster recovery is now production. And that's something that people kind of forget and don't really take a look at so much. And then, of course, we have finally, last but certainly not least, Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, which is the whole reason you downloaded this thing, right? So you can do things like test your disaster recovery plans, build those disaster recovery plans. We have a great question. Can we simulate disaster recovery testing using Orchestrator 5? Yes, that is the whole point, right? We want to simulate those DR tests in multiple different scenarios, right? So I can say, I'm going to test once and I'm going to recover here. I'm going to test again with instant VM recovery over here. And now I'm going to test a third site and see what my speeds are like there. So you can do that all with Orchestrator.
Yeah, and in fact, the more that you test, the more you're going to be able to identify the small little things that you hadn't taken into account, like, hey, I can't find a domain controller, or hey, this IP address is not DHCP, or, for all of those kind of things, the more that you test, the more that you can refine and ensure that you can recover when you want to. All right. With 1 minute left, Alec, Melissa, any last thoughts? Otherwise, we want to give some thoughts on what's coming next on Friday and next Monday.
I would just echo you, Jason, and say test, test, test. The technology we're using is Veeam Virtual Labs, which exist in Veeam Backup Replication, but when Orchestrator is working its magic, it's a whole nother world. So people should really get over there and try that.
Fair enough. And we've already talked about, yes, download that 30-day trial, get that going. All right, on Friday this week, a lot of our team is actually out at AWS reInvent. And so Rick Vanover and company will be giving a reInvent wrap-up and talking about perhaps everything that Amazon's talking about and the data protection ramifications of that. And then next Monday, Dave Russell is such a slacker this month. Dave is again off next week, and Jeff Reichard will be joining me, and we're going to be talking about regulatory compliance and looking at regulatory mandates and how that also affects data protection strategy. I'm kidding about Dave being slacker. He gets the rest of the month after that. So, so with that, Alec, Melissa, thank you both for joining us today, and for the folks at home, thanks for watching.